Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Lance Tan, and I'm thrilled to have you here for our NCLEX Processing Information session. Today, we have participants on Zoom, but we are also live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome. You're probably curious what this session is all about. So, this is for the international nurses or international nursing students who are looking into applying for the NCLEX in the US and want to know more about what the process is like to apply for a US registered nurse license and eventually start working as a registered nurse in the US. So, I just want to introduce myself for a little bit. I live in California, USA, but I returned to my home country, the Philippines, to complete my nursing education. Even then, I knew my dream was to practice as a nurse in the US. And as an internationally educated nurse, I quickly realized that pursuing this goal meant navigating the NCLEX and US licensure process on my own, with limited guidance and many unanswered questions. Now, the journey involved countless hours of research, trial and error, and moments of uncertainty. It wasn't easy, but it shaped my purpose. When I began working with Archer Review, I knew I wanted to give back by helping fellow foreign educated nurses like me. Today, I'll share essential information, practical tips, and encouragement to guide you through the NCLEX and USRN licensure process, so you never have to feel like you're doing this alone. Today, we're going to simplify the often daunting process of the NCLEX preparation, especially for our international nursing friends. We understand how complex it can seem, but our goal is to make this journey as smooth as possible for you. So, in the upcoming slides, we'll delve into common questions, the states where you can apply, and the essentials you need before and after passing the NCLEX. We'll also clarify the differences between the NCLEX, licensing, and visas. And don't worry, we have a live Q&A at the end, so you'll have the chance to ask any burning questions you might have. And as a bonus, if we still have time later, I'll briefly explain how to navigate the New York State RN licensure by examination process, one of the most commonly asked topics by our international students. So let's dive right in. So here in our NCLEX Processing, a simple guide for international nurses session, we're going to address some of the most common questions international nurses have about the NCLEX. We'll explore which states you can apply to first, what you need both before and after taking the NCLEX, and clarify the differences between the NCLEX, a license, and visas. And of course, we'll wrap everything up with a live Q&A session where you can ask questions and or if you want personalized guidance, we have an option for that as well. So let's dive right in. Common questions. Common NCLEX questions. First, it's important to know that you're not alone in this process. Many nurses have the same questions and concerns, and planning early can significantly reduce your stress and save you time. One of the first questions is, where do I start? It's crucial to understand the steps involved and which state you should even consider applying to first, as requirements can vary. Next, there's the question of whether you need a social security number or SSN right now. Many states don't require an SSN to take the NCLEX, but you'll need one to get your RN license in most states after you pass. It's important to know which state you plan on applying first, and as each state requirements are very different from one another. Also, additionally, you might be wondering about language proficiency tests like the IELTS or TOEFL. These requirements can differ by state and employer, so it's a good idea to check beforehand. And finally, a common concern is whether you can work in the US after passing the NCLEX. Passing the exam is a significant step, but remember that work authorization involves additional steps related to visas and licensing, and that's something we're gonna tackle on later. So we'll explore these points further and discuss states that allow you to take the NCLEX without a SSN or social security number next. Remember, it's about planning and understanding the requirements to make your transition smoother. So let's explore the states where you can take the NCLEX without needing a social security number. and that will be a US SSN or US Social Security number. So these states include Illinois, Minnesota, West Virginia, Idaho, Ohio, Colorado, Montana, Texas, and New York. It's important to remember, though, that while you can take the exam in these states without an SSN, most of them will require you to still have one- uh, most of them will still require you to have a social security number in order for you to obtain your RN licensure, even after passing. This information can be crucial in your planning process, especially if you don't have a social security number. I always recommend starting this whole process by selecting the state you will be applying for first, because each state has different sets of requirements and you don't want to prepare for a different set of requirements, knowing that you'll be applying to a state with different requirements. Next, we'll cover states that do require a social security number before you can test or apply for licensure. But before that, does anyone have any questions with the points that we've tackled already? Do I have audio? Someone is asking, do I have audio? Am I audible, everyone? Hello? Okay, I think we're clear. Yes. So if no questions so far, okay, you can hear me now. No questions so far, we'll move on. Now, now that we've tackled states that don't require an SSN, here are states to avoid if you don't have a SSN yet. When considering which states to apply for your NCLEX, it's crucial to be aware of those that typically require a SSN before you can even obtain licensure or even test in the first place. Now, these states are not limited to, but including California, Florida, Arizona, Georgia, and Nevada. Choosing to apply in these states without an SSN could lead to potential delays or even denials, which can be both time-consuming and frustrating. Trust me, I've been there. For anyone who's confused about SSNs, you can obtain a social security number in the US by being a resident or citizen here in the US. Understanding these requirements is key. By planning strategically and selecting the right state, you can avoid unnecessary hurdles and ensure a smoother path to starting your nursing career in the US. Now, what to do before the NCLEX? Before you take the NCLEX, there are several common requirements you need to prepare. Let's go through them. And now, first, we need to remember that every state requirement is different, but these are just things. This is just a list of common requirements that overlap with one another in terms of all the state requirements. First is have your nursing school transcripts or transcripts of records ready. They're essential for verifying your educational background. More often than not, the Board of Nursing will require your school, not you as an applicant, it has to be your school, to directly send these documents to their office. So check in with your university office and see if this is something they offer doing or if there are any alternative options. So that requires a lot of coordination with you as the applicant and also your university's registrar or office. Next, depending on where you're applying, a local nursing license might be needed. So if you already have a local nursing license in your country, you would also have to submit credentials for that by going to your state board of nursing or your country's board of nursing office. Ask them to fill out a form required by the board of nursing from the state that you're applying for, and then also sending those documents from their office to the address that the state is providing. Another one is Credential Evaluation Services, or CES. These are third-party evaluation service providers that act as a middleman authorized by the State Board of Nursing to go through your documents and verify your eligibility for them. So this evaluation confirms that your education meets their Board of Nursing standards. Now, another one is English exams. So this is very state dependent. Most states, an English exam is required, especially if your nursing program wasn't completed or conducted in English. Remember, this depends, sorry. Remember that this depends on the state, so you would have to go through the State Board of Nursing requirements if an English proficiency test is required from them. Now, don't forget the Board of Nursing has application and associated fees. Every state has its own process, so be sure to check the specific requirements for where you plan to practice. And you can go through these yourself by just Googling the state you're applying for, let's say Nevada Board of Nursing, RN licensure requirements. And then you just have to make sure that the website is the official website, the legitimate website, and then you'll be able to go through the list of requirements. Once you are familiar now with this information, as I went through them with you guys, you'd be able to be more familiar with the list of requirements when you're going through those application portals in the State Board of Nursing you're applying for. Finally, when you've completed all the steps and the state has notified you that you are finally eligible to take the NCLEX, you'll need to register with Pearson VUE. Pearson VUE is the authorized test-taking partner of the NCLEX. This step is necessary to schedule your exam, and at this time, all the NCLEX tests are still in person. I know there are talks about being online, but as of now, all the NCLEX testing are still conducted in person. So check on nclex.com for the nearest testing site from you. Remember, each state has its own set of rules. Make sure you're familiar with the requirements of the state you're applying to, as this preparation will help you navigate the process smoothly and avoid unnecessary delays. Any questions so far? Can my SSN or social security number for my country work in the States, in the US? Someone is asking. No, it would have to be a social security number authorized by the US. So it has to be a US SSN. And what is an SSN? SSN is a social security number that is granted to residents or citizens in the US. In order to be able to apply for work here, you have to provide this to your employer, and in this scenario, also to the State Board of Nursing. To whom to follow up to expedite my NCLEX application with the New York State Board of Nursing, or to know my eligibility to take the test? Someone is asking. So usually when you're applying for the New York State Board of Nursing, and I know we're jumping ahead of the topics already, um, you would just have to go through the New York State Board of Nursing website. You'd be able to see their phone number hotline or even an email that you can contact if if your application is experiencing delays. Yeah. Okay. So next, let's dive into the details of English exams and NCLEX testing. So first, let's talk about the English exams like the IELTS or TOEFL. I know there are many more, such as the Pearson English exam. These exams are required by some states, especially if your nursing program wasn't taught in English. It's important to ensure that your exam results are valid at the time you apply. Keep an eye on the expiration dates on these so you don't run into any unexpected delays. So usually when you take an English exam, they have once you pass those, they have an expiration date that can last for 1 year, 2 years, or even a few more years. Just make sure that you know when your English exam passing certification is expiring so you don't encounter any delays when you're applying for the NCLEX. Now, onto the actual NCLEX testing. One key point to remember is that NCLEX testing is available in many countries, making it accessible globally. An important advantage is that once you pass the NCLEX, your past result does not expire. This gives you some flexibility and peace of mind as you move through the licensing process. So a common question is that, Lance, if I've already taken the NCLEX and I applied with New York, can I do I still need to take the NCLEX in California, in Nevada, in Georgia? No, you do not have to take the NCLEX again. That will just be another application called licensure by endorsement process. So there are two types of application processes. One is licensure by examination, which means this is your initial application for taking the NCLEX. And then the other one is application by endorsement, which means you've applied for a different state already and you've passed the NCLEX. You're now just endorsing your licensure to that other state without having to take the NCLEX again since you've already completed all those other requirements. Now, there are still a set of requirements required by the state you are endorsing to, just accept the NCLEX. So, what happens after you pass the NCLEX? Now that we've explored what you need before the NCLEX, let's discuss what happens after you pass it. This is where the journey towards the obtaining your USRN license really begins. First, passing the NCLEX RN is a significant milestone, but it's just one part of the process. You must also complete all Board of Nursing requirements specific to your state. This typically includes completing a fingerprinting and background check. Most states also require you to have a social security number at this stage. Remember that the path to your RN license is a sequential process. Think of it as a journey from education to evaluation to Board of Nursing, then Pearson View to schedule your NCLEX, and then to the NCLEX, taking the actual test. Now, after passing the NCLEX, finally obtaining your RN licensure, which can happen after obtaining your SSN. And then you finally achieve the licensure. This big picture approach helps ensure you meet all necessary steps without unnecessary delays. Keep this roadmap in mind as you move forward. Now, this journey might seem complex, but with each step, you're getting closer to your goal. Keep going, and soon you'll hold that USRN licensure in your hands. Now, can I work in the US after I pass? Passing the NCLEX is a significant milestone, I know, but it's important to remember that it does not automatically qualify you to work in the US just yet. First, you'll need an active RN license. This means you've completed all necessary requirements from your state's Board of Nursing. Next, if you are not a US resident or citizen, you will need a work authorization. This involves understanding the visa process. So here's a little quick overview. NCLEX is essential if you're seeking US employer sponsorship. Visa screen is a requirement by the USCIS. And the most common way a lot of international nurses get to the US is by EB3 visa. This can be obtained through an employer from the US or a staffing agency that will seal a contract between you and an employer in the US. So, just to reiterate, if you are a foreign nurse and you are trying to apply for licensure or for work in the US, once you have that RN licensure, once you have that NCLEX passing already, once you've passed the NCLEX, you can start applying for employers from the US if you already have a social security number, or you can work with a staffing agency where they will coordinate a contract between an employer and you, the applicant, and they will also arrange obtaining the social security number for you and obtaining an actual visa in order for you to be able to, in order for you to be authorized to work in the US legally. As you work with staffing agencies and apply for employers, just make sure you check for the legitimacy of the agency, read through the fine print of your contract, and ensure that you are okay with its working duration, compensation, and how they'll be supporting you throughout this whole journey. From the moment you pass your NCLEX, you get your priority date with the visa bulletin, you land in the US, but are still waiting to start your job up until your first day working as a US RN. Make sure that that staffing agency that you have, the contract that you have, that they'll be supporting you throughout that whole process. And if not, make sure you are okay with that. Now, by understanding these steps, you'll be setting yourself up for success in order to transition to working in the US. Any questions so far? Let me see if there's any questions. Okay, no questions in Zoom so far. Okay, I am scrolling through Facebook on my phone, so I'm gonna try to answer some of the questions here before we move on to the New York State licensure process or a Q&A. How many times I can take the NCLEX if I failed? Now, this also is state requirement. A lot of these little details are dependent on the state requirements. I know the most common one is three. You can take the NCLEX three times before you have to take another refresher course, before they require you to take a refresher course and complete some units in order to take the NCLEX again. And each NCLEX take, each attempt of the NCLEX requires a 90-day, I believe it's 45 or 90-day gap. You just have to double check on that before you take the next attempt again. I just got my bachelor's degree for nursing. I'm just wondering, do I need to take the course for nursing, or I can just take or review the NCLEX? So in order to apply for the Board of Nursing, they would just have to screen your educational credentials and see if the your educational credentials meets the criteria, the passing criteria in order to be eligible to apply for the NCLEX. Now, this is also state dependent. They usually have the units required listed on their website. So it will say there anatomy and physiology, 9 units, biochemistry, how many units. And as long as your school or your university complies um with the standard criteria for passing or to be eligible to apply for the Board of Nursing. And this is something you can check in also with your university or their registrar if there have been previous applicants in the past that have successfully applied for the NCLEX, or there are times where they have encountered some gaps or some educational deficiencies. That is something you can check in with your university also, so you can just anticipate that and prepare it ahead of time. But for the most part, if you have a bachelor's degree in nursing, um, usually they will qualify that, and that is within passing standard criteria in order to apply for most state board of nursing in the US. Okay. So it is 45 days. Someone in the Zoom confirmed that it's 45 days to in order to be able to take your next attempt. Does Archer Review help in passing the NCLEX test? Yes, we offer courses and programs such as our question bank, live review lectures, and then a combination of these like our SurePass program in order for you to be fully equipped and prepared to take the NCLEX. Is the NCLEX question timed or you can take it slowly as you like. So the whole NCLEX test, you have 5 hours to take it. Now, the questions can range from 85 questions up to 150 questions, depending on the computer adaptive test. So the computer adaptive test determines whether you have passed or failed the NCLEX on 85 questions or up until 150 questions. And it's up to you to allocate your time, time frame, that whole 5 hours for any breaks in between, or to budget how much time you should be spending on each question. Can you please enlighten us on the test changes that is said to take effect from April? So as of now, I believe there is no official notice yet from the actual NCLEX. Maybe there's a lot of hearsay, but from I last checked, which was about a few weeks ago, there isn't anything official yet. So everything will stay the same. Um, Everything is still nothing has been modified officially yet. I failed the NCLEX twice. Which Archer review program would you recommend? For me, we always recommend the SurePass because this includes the high yield question bank. We have on-demand live lectures if you need more strengthening on your content, and also a 3-day live review course that you can tune in right before your NCLEX. And that is just a bunch of high yield information that's essential before you take the NCLEX. I'm taking the NCLEX for Australia. If I pass it, can I use it in the US, specifically New York? Is that what is called endorsement? So yes, you can still use your NCLEX scores even if you've applied for Australia and you're applying now to the US. It would just have to be a different set of requirements, but the NCLEX portion, that is something that you can coordinate with the Board of Nursing in New York and tell them you've already passed the NCLEX in Australia, and then you just have to submit all the other requirements, and then they can waive that NCLEX portion for you. Okay. Will you share the important links to the attendees? So I can share that the Archer Review website link that's leading to all the programs we have on the chat box here. But any questions so far before we end the session? I know we didn't have time for the New York Board of Nursing portion, but that is something we can do in our next session also. But if you have any other questions, we're here to help. You can just email me at lance.tan@archerpulse.com for a private or individualized NCLEX processing support. So we'll help you understand the state requirements, guide you through each step of the process, and we'll also create a custom timeline for you depending on your current situation or circumstance um, in order for you to have a clear direction on what steps you need to take, and also just a more custom individualized timeline for you in order for you to smoothly apply for the NCLEX. All right, guys, thank you so much. If you have any questions, again, just leave them in our email. Just feel free to email us if you have any questions. And I will see you guys on our next NCLEX processing session. Thank you and have a good day, everyone.